There is a force living inside you. A force that drives you to move with confidence, think with absolute clarity, and trust every step you take. But that force, more often than not, gets buried. It gets silenced. It gets strangled by doubt. And here's the truth you need to hear. You were not born insecure. That uncertainty was placed inside you. Sometimes it came from harsh words you heard growing up. Sometimes it arrived through criticism, through failure, through unfair comparisons that piled up on your shoulders over the years. But if there is one thing that Stoicism teaches us with total certainty, it is this: any mind, without exception, can be trained to trust itself again. Now stop for a moment and imagine. What would your life look like right now if you could act with complete confidence? No fear of getting it wrong. No dependence on anyone else's approval. No sabotaging yourself before you even begin. What decision would you finally dare to make? Because here's what you need to understand. Insecurity does not disappear while you wait for it to leave. It weakens the moment you start moving. Today, I am going to walk you through 10 Stoic practices. Simple on the surface, but profound at their core. Designed to dissolve self-doubt, restore your mental clarity, and rebuild the power that has always been within you. It does not matter how long you have felt stuck. It does not matter how deep that feeling runs. You can absolutely reclaim control of your mind. And the first step starts right now. Before we go any further, leave a comment below. Write, "Today, I choose to trust myself." Even if the voice of fear is still screaming at full volume, that choice, that single decision, marks the beginning of a new pattern in your life. A pattern where your doubts no longer drive your choices. Your conviction does. Your clarity does. Your capability does. And before the first lesson, just 2 quick things. Hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get into it together. Lesson 1. Stop trying to be perfect. How many times have you stopped yourself from starting something simply because you did not feel ready? How many times have you stood completely frozen, paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, by the fear of being judged, by the terror of not pulling it off with flawless execution? You are not alone in this. Most people confuse perfectionism with dedication, with ambition, with drive. But the truth is brutal and clear. Perfection is not an ideal. It is a prison. It is a quiet, subtle trap that disguises itself as high standards, but underneath, it is nothing but fear in a suit and tie. Epictetus never asked his students whether they had done everything correctly. He asked one question: did you move forward? Because progress is the engine that carries you ahead, while perfectionism is the anchor that holds you in place. Perfectionism is not strength. It is insecurity wearing the costume of discipline. You want to do things so perfectly that you forget to actually do them at all. You wait so long for the perfect moment that your entire life slips past while you stand watching from the sidelines. And the more you chase that flawless image, the more you disconnect from who you truly are. Because nobody is perfect. Nobody. You are human. And being human means learning, stumbling, correcting course, and growing. Perfection demands an untouchable image. Progress demands something far more valuable: the courage to start again. Have you ever noticed how perfectionism drains you of every ounce of energy? You begin a simple task, and it eats twice the time it should. You stall on an important project because it is not quite right yet. You refuse to show your work because you think it still needs improvement. And so the world never gets to see what you genuinely have to offer, because you never let it out. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: do not wait for the perfection of Plato's Republic. Be satisfied with even the smallest step forward and do not consider that result insignificant. What transforms you is not what is perfect. It is what is finished. It is what you had the guts to put out into the world, even when you were afraid. And there is another side to this that does not get talked about enough. When you demand perfection from yourself, you begin demanding it from everyone around you too. And suddenly, everything disappoints you. You live in a constant state of frustration, comparison, and exhaustion. You forget that life is about the process, not the performance. So today, pause, breathe, and ask yourself with complete honesty, am I genuinely trying to grow, or am I just trying to appear flawless? Because if it is only about appearances, you will stay stuck. But if it is about real progress, then even when you stumble, you will keep moving. And that is already a victory worth celebrating. The practice for today is simple, but it carries real weight. Free yourself from the impossible ideal. Do what you can with what you have, and then improve from there. That is the path of genuine evolution. That is how you build self-worth rooted in action, not in illusion. If this lesson hit something real inside you, go to the comments right now and write, "Today I choose progress, not perfection." Because every time you act, even when you are afraid, you are sending a direct message to your own mind. You are saying, I can trust myself. And that trust is worth infinitely more than any version of perfect. Lesson 2. Remember that you will die and truly live. This might sound dark at first, but it is actually one of the most liberating ideas in all of Stoic philosophy. Memento mori. Remember that you will die. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave this life at any moment. Let that determine what you do, what you say, and what you think." That is not a threat. That is a calling. It is a reminder that time does not wait for anyone. And that the insecurity consuming you today, the thing that feels like a giant right now, may not even exist tomorrow. The truth is that most of our suffering grows from illusions. Fear of what other people will say, shame about appearing weak, the relentless doubt of not being enough. But the moment you remember how short this life really is, those illusions begin to collapse. You start to see that none of that carries the weight you gave it. You realize you are not here to collect fears. You are here to live with courage. Epictetus put it this way: think of death as something that is always watching you, and let that guide your every action and your every thought. It is as if death walks beside you every single day, not to frighten you, but to remind you of what actually matters. Because 100 years from now, nobody will care whether you stumbled through a presentation, took a wrong turn, or forgot to use your signal light. But you will have known, even if it comes to you too late, that you stopped yourself from living fully because you were afraid of looking imperfect. How many dreams have you delayed because of insecurity? How many times did you let love pass you by? Did you let your talent sleep? Did you let your passion die simply from fear of trying? From the terror of giving yourself fully to something? Think about this. You were born with a limited amount of time, and every moment you surrender to fear, you are choosing survival over living. Memento mori is not about death. It is about urgency. It is about waking up before it is too late. So try this Stoic exercise. Hold your fears up against time. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? The answer, most of the time, is no. And that is genuinely liberating. You begin to realize that most of your insecurities are nothing but smoke, and that the fire of life is asking you to start right now, even with fear still in your chest. The practice is straightforward. Every single day, do at least one thing that is aligned with who you truly are. It can be something small, expressing gratitude, turning down something that is harming you, taking one concrete step toward a goal that belongs to you. But do it. Because real life happens when you act, not when you wait. Seneca said, "You may not wake up tomorrow, or if you do, you may not fall asleep again tonight. Start living now." Leave in the comments, "Today I live with courage." And more than writing it, feel it. Live it like every minute matters. Because it does. And when you honor time, insecurity loses its grip. And your life, finally, starts to make sense. Lesson 3. Accept change before it sweeps you away. Change does not ask for your permission. It walks in, turns everything upside down, shakes your certainties loose, breaks your routines, and sometimes shatters pieces of your heart. But what actually hurts is not the change itself. It is your resistance to accepting it. Seneca wrote, "Even as I speak of change, I myself have already changed. Nothing we see remains." And he completed that thought with a powerful metaphor about a river. You never step into the same river twice, because neither the river nor you are the same. The problem is that even knowing this, we keep holding on. We grip tightly to the job that no longer has meaning, to the relationship that has lost its reciprocity, to the image of who we used to be, as if the past could somehow rescue us from the present. But it cannot. Life does not stop. And the harder you resist, the more violently it pulls you under. Here is the real truth. Insecurity is not born from what is new. It is born from attachment to what no longer exists. It is born from the fear of losing control, when in reality, that control was never yours to begin with. The Stoics did not fear change. They studied it, they accepted it, they understood that everything is temporary. The body, status, relationships, even memory. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything is in transition, both the one who remembers and the thing being remembered. And yet we keep insisting that everything stays the same, as if stability were synonymous with safety. But sometimes that very desire for stability is exactly what keeps us trapped, paralyzed, slowly decaying in silence. When someone leaves, when a chapter ends, when life shifts direction, you have two choices: resist and suffer, or accept and grow." Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, used a powerful image to explain our relationship with change. He said we are like a dog tied to a moving cart. The cart is life, and it is going to move, with or without your cooperation. The dog has two options: follow along with ease, or dig in its heels and be dragged. The choice exists, but the road does not stop for anyone. The more you fight what you cannot control, the more pain you carry. But when you accept, when you move at the rhythm of what is inevitable, you arrive intact. Accepting is not surrendering. It is understanding that every change brings with it an invitation to evolve, to release what no longer belongs to you, to find a new path and begin again with greater intention. You can look at a loss and see only the emptiness, everything that is gone, everything that is missing. Or you can look again, more calmly this time, and recognize the space that has opened up, the life that is beginning to emerge right in front of you. It is difficult, yes. Sometimes it hurts so deeply that you feel broken, incomplete. But even broken, you can still choose to move forward. So instead of fighting what is inevitable, ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What part of me needs to change alongside what is changing out there? Practice this. Look at one area of your life where you are still resisting. Maybe it is a relationship that no longer nourishes you, a plan that no longer serves any purpose, a version of yourself that has already expired. Let it go. Understand that letting go is not weakness, it is maturity. And acceptance is the very first step toward turning what looked like an ending into a brand new beginning. Walk with change, not against it. Because the person who accepts the flow of life does not lose control, they gain freedom. And where there is freedom, there is strength. Because nothing makes you more unbreakable than the courage to keep going, even when everything around you is shifting. Lesson 4. Self-control is the foundation of your freedom. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the biggest obstacle standing in your way is yourself? Not the other person, not the situation, your reaction, not the unexpected event that disrupted your day, but how far you let it take over. Stoicism teaches that genuine power begins the moment you learn to govern yourself. And that has a name: self-control. Self-control is not coldness. It is not rigidity. It is clarity. It is understanding that not everything deserves a response, that not every emotion deserves a stage, and that not every impulse deserves to become an action. Seneca wrote, "Learn to discard the part of yourself that disappoints you and focus on what you can actually govern." And you know what disappoints you most of all? When you sabotage yourself, when you explode on impulse, when you spend what you should not have spent, say what did not need to be said, or feed thoughts that only drag you further down. Self-control is that space between the trigger and the reaction. It is the moment where you choose to act like someone who governs their own life, not like someone who is at the mercy of every passing emotion. Feel envy rising? Recognize it, breathe, and convert it into gratitude. Feel anger building? Observe it, channel it, and respond with clarity and firmness. Feel anxiety creeping in? Come back to the present, one step at a time. You do not need to become a robot, but you also do not need to remain a slave to your own impulses. Self-control is what happens when you begin using your mind as a tool instead of fighting it as an enemy. It is when you train your gaze before you react, your breathing before you speak, and your awareness before you decide. Want a simple Stoic exercise? Today, observe your triggers. Not to punish yourself, to understand yourself. What knocks you off center? What makes you react without thinking? Name it. Look it directly in the eye. And then deliberately choose a different response, because that is how genuine strength is built. Through the daily decision not to be dominated by the chaos within or the chaos outside. Self-control is trained, and every day that you hold yourself steady, even when every part of you wants to explode, you are sending yourself a message. I am not a puppet controlled by my emotions. I am the one who decides. True security is born in that exact moment, when you realize that you can trust yourself, not only when everything is going well, but especially when everything falls apart and you remain standing. Lesson 5. You have the power to rewrite your beliefs. You can work hard, dress well, absorb new knowledge every day. But as long as you are still carrying a limiting belief about who you are, everything will feel harder than it actually needs to be. It is like sprinting with a chain wrapped around your ankle. You are giving everything you have, but you are barely moving. Maybe someone once told you that you were slow, lazy, weak, incapable. Maybe you failed at something once and decided in that moment that you would never try again. Maybe you cannot even remember what happened, but your mind still behaves as if it were absolutely true. Those old voices do not shout at you. They whisper, quietly. constantly. And the problem is that somewhere along the way, you believe them. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by the things that happen to them, but by the judgments they form about those things." In other words, it is not what happened to you. It is what you started believing about yourself afterward. Beliefs are not just thoughts. They are roots. They drive deep into the ground and shape everything you see, everything you feel, and every choice you make. And if those roots are rotten, your life grows crooked, full of fear, full of self-sabotage, full of invisible ceilings that you built yourself without realizing it. That is why I am saying this to you right now. You have the power to rewrite your own mental story. The Stoics never taught that you should run from pain. They taught you to look at it with clear eyes, to challenge the voice that says you cannot, to push back against the idea that you always get it wrong, to dismantle the thought that you were never meant for this. Because it does not matter who planted that seed in you, a teacher from years ago, someone in your family, a social situation that left a mark. What matters is that right now, today, you do not have to keep carrying it. As long as you do not question those beliefs, you will remain trapped inside a version of yourself that no longer exists. You have grown. You have changed. But your mind is still reacting as if you were that rejected child, that silent teenager, that insecure adult. The real transformation begins when you stop saying, "This is just how I am," and start saying, "I can become something different." The mind that once worked against you can become your greatest ally. But that requires you to stop accepting every thought as truth, every fear as destiny, and above all, every criticism as a life sentence. Your thoughts need a filter, not blind faith, because a thought is not a command. It is a proposal, and you have every right to say, "I no longer accept this." The practice for today is direct. Begin listening to your automatic phrases. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "I can't," "I'm not capable," "That's not for someone like me," stop, breathe, and tell yourself, "This is just an old belief, and I can choose a new one." If this idea stirred something inside you, go to the comments and write, "Today I choose to believe in myself." Make that phrase your new standard, because the person who changes their beliefs changes what is possible for them, and the person who changes what is possible changes everything. Lesson 6. Take control of what is yours and release the rest. You feel insecure because you are trying to control things that were never in your hands. You are trying to predict how other people will react. You are trying to map out every possible outcome in advance. You are trying to force reality to unfold exactly as you planned. And when it does not, when it never does, you fall apart. But maybe that is not fragility. Maybe it is simply a lack of clarity about where your power ends and where the rest of the world begins. Epictetus taught this to his students every single day. Some things are in our power, others are not. That is the foundation of the dichotomy of control. Simple, but liberating beyond measure. You do not control what other people think of you. You do not control outcomes. You do not control the way life unfolds. But you absolutely do control something infinitely more important. Your decisions, your actions, your character. Insecurity is born the moment you forget that. When you spend all your energy trying to please, trying to predict, trying to manage everything around you, and end up exhausted and frustrated because nothing turned out the way you imagined. Here is a concrete example. You walk into a job interview. Instead of focusing on your preparation and what you genuinely bring to the table, you spend the entire day obsessing over whether they will like you, whether you will be selected, whether they will validate you. but that is completely outside your control. What is inside your control is how you show up. Your presence, your clarity, your truth. And that alone is already enough. Or think about it at work. You go above and beyond every day. You give more than anyone asks. And you wait for recognition, for praise, for a promotion. But without realizing it, you have placed your self-worth entirely in someone else's hands. Someone who may not even be paying attention. While in the meantime, you forget to ask yourself, do I recognize my own value? Would I still do this if no one was watching? Seneca wrote that genuine inner balance comes from focusing entirely on your own actions, not on the reactions of others. When you do what is right because it is right, not because you expect a reward, something powerful is born inside you, a strength that no one can take away. Accepting the dichotomy of control is not easy, but it is precisely what separates anxiety from serenity. Because when you know you have done everything within your reach, you can sleep in peace, even if the world did not respond the way you hoped. That peace is not indifference. It is wisdom. It is knowing where your responsibility ends and where the flow of life begins. The practice is direct. The next time you feel insecure, pause. Ask yourself, is this actually within my control? If the answer is yes, act with clarity and intention. If the answer is no, release it. Breathe. Come back to yourself. Because every time you focus on what depends on you, you plant serenity. And every time you let go of what does not, you harvest freedom. Lesson 7. Practice knowing yourself. Stoicism was never just a theory to be admired from a distance. It is a practice, a discipline, a journey inward. And above all, it is self-knowledge. The Stoics did not study philosophy to appear wise at dinner parties. They reflected in order to become conscious, because they understood that the greatest power a human being possesses is not their appearance, their status, or their achievements. It is the clarity about who they actually are. You can conquer the entire world, but if you do not know who is behind your decisions, everything collapses at the first real criticism, the first false compliment, the first unresolved doubt. It all comes crashing down. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And he was right. The majority of your fears are not out there in the world. They are inside your mind, in the way you interpret what happens to you, in the way you experience every situation you move through. That is exactly why knowing yourself is not a luxury. It is emotional survival. The person who does not know themselves lives in a permanent state of reaction. The person who knows themselves makes choices with full awareness. And that difference changes absolutely everything. Self-knowledge is not sitting in silence waiting for mystical answers to descend from the sky. It is having the courage to look honestly at what you feel without running from it. It is stopping the habit of blaming the world and beginning to ask, what is it in me that still allows this? It is understanding that your anger, many times, is really just fear wearing a different mask. That your procrastination, most of the time, is perfectionism in disguise. And that your anxiety, more often than not, comes directly from your attempt to control everything. None of this is discovered overnight. It is revealed through living with greater presence, through observing your triggers, through reflecting on your patterns with honesty, through asking yourself the questions that are uncomfortable but ultimately set you free. Stoicism is that mirror. It forces you to look at yourself directly, and at first, you might not like what you see. But that is precisely where transformation begins. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. But when you start to understand what moves you, what blocks you, what makes you explode or retreat into silence, you begin to have real power. The power to act with intention, to respond with balance, to hold your ground with firmness, not from impulse, but from pure awareness. So stop searching for answers out there in the world. Start building silence within. Observe what hurts you, what calms you, what makes you shrink and hide who you genuinely are. With every discovery, you become stronger. With every truth you accept about yourself, you become freer. If this lesson touched something real inside you, go to the comments and write, "Today I choose to know myself with courage." Because the more you know yourself, the less you need to pretend. And the more truth you carry within, the less the world has the power to confuse you. Lesson 8. Your mind believes what you keep repeating. Have you ever stopped to really listen to what you tell yourself every single day? Maybe not out loud, but there, in the quiet space of your own mind. That voice that shows up the moment you make a mistake. You failed again. You never learn. Nothing ever works for you. And do you know what the most dangerous part is? It is not the mistake itself. It is what you say to yourself in the silence right after it. That is where the real damage happens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What you think of yourself is far more important than what anyone else thinks of you." And that is not just philosophical writing in an old book. That is emotional survival at its most fundamental level. Because the way you treat yourself on the inside determines exactly how you live on the outside. If your mind is a constant battlefield, you will live in a state of high alert, even on peaceful days. If your mind is a courtroom, you will always be on trial, and you will always be both the accused and the harshest judge. But when your mind becomes a refuge, everything changes. You no longer need to run. You no longer need to hide. You begin moving through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that no matter what happens, they have a safe place inside themselves. Tony Robbins said something simple but sharp. The only person who can truly change your life is you. And it starts right here, in the silent conversation you are having with your own mind every single day. So today, begin replacing accusation with guidance. Instead of "I ruined it again," say, "I made a mistake, and I can grow from this." Instead of "Nothing ever goes right for me," say, "This is hard, but I am still showing up." That is not self-deception. That is emotional intelligence. That is taking the wheel of your own internal narrative, instead of being hijacked by cruel and intrusive thoughts. And do you know one of the most powerful antidotes to self-judgment? Gratitude. Not that forced, automated gratitude you feel obligated to express at the end of the year. Real gratitude. The kind you actually feel. The kind that recognizes the meal you have today, the roof over your head right now, the body that is still carrying you forward, the small victories that nobody applauded, but that kept you standing when you had every reason to fall. When you start to practice genuine gratitude, even in the middle of pain, your mind shifts its focus. It pulls you out of everything that is lacking and shows you what already exists. It pulls you away from what is hurting and brings you back to what is holding you together. And that calms you. It strengthens you. It transforms you. Another essential practice: challenge your negative thoughts. Ask yourself, is that voice actually mine? Or did I simply learn to treat myself that way? Is what I am doing right now actually helping me? Or am I just repeating an old program that was written by someone else? Your thoughts deserve a filter. Your mind deserves better than everything it accepts without question. You are allowed to push back. You are allowed to say, I no longer accept this version of myself. And every time you do, every time you choose a more honest and compassionate inner dialogue, you are rewriting the code that has been running in the background of your life for far too long.